Good evening. On behalf of NYU Myers Alumni Association, I welcome you to tonight's program, Demystifying the Publishing Process. Our distinguished panelists will share their journey as writers and editors, provide helpful resources and tips for overcoming the challenges we all face when deciding to publish. Whether you are considering writing your first article or a seasoned editor, there's always something for us to learn and something you'll hear in this exciting discussion tonight. Dr. Donna Hallis is a clinical professor and pediatric nurse practitioner program director at the NYU Roy Myers College of Nursing. She is the associate editor of the Journal of Pediatric Healthcare. She has published widely in pediatric journals and served as a content expert for the American Academy of Pediatrics. Now that's special for a nurse. Dr. Fidel Lim is a clinical associate professor at NYU Roy Myers College of Nursing. Dr. Lim has published articles on an array of topics ranging from clinical practice, nursing education issues, LGBTQ health disparities, reflective practice, men in nursing, and Florence Nightingale, among others. He's now currently working with somebody I know on an article I heard today. Dr. Roseanne Rasso is currently the Chief Nursing Officer for the Magnet-designated New York Presbyterian Weill Cornell campus. She is also the Editor-in-Chief of Nursing Management, the Journal of Excellence in Nursing Leadership, a trusted resource for frontline leaders with a global circulation. Dr. Rasso authors rousing monthly editorials and has over 100 publications with 250 citations. Dr. Sharon Wexler is the professor and department chairman at Pace University of Health Professions. She is serving as our moderator this evening, and I will now turn the run of the program over to her.
Thank you, Mary. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. So I'm going to start off the panel by asking all three panelists the same question. And the question is, tell us about your journey publishing and writing as a nurse. What motivated you to start writing? And tell us about your first publication. Roseanne, would you like to go first, please?
Sure. Thank you, Sharon. So my journey started, well, it was always a dream. Like, you know, when you're a young nurse or even a mid-level practitioner, you think of, oh gosh, I want to be published someday. So it always felt like more of a dream than a real thing. But then what got me started was working with co-authors on projects that I had done or been a part of, and then submitting them as a group. So being a co-author, I think, helped me get a little bit of confidence. The first article, and I know Carl Curtin is in the attendance, so he'll appreciate this story, but I submitted a paper to AJN, which was promptly rejected with a whole lot of suggestions, and it scared the heck out of me, and I just put it aside and didn't touch it again, which is not good advice. We'll talk more about that later. So then what really got me started was when I got on the editorial board of Nursing Management and had to write for them at some regular basis. And what started me there was I did a podium presentation, and one of the publishers came up to me and said, you know, you should write this for us. This would be a great feature for the journal. And so that was my first sole author on a piece. And then it keeps on going. Then I went into my doctoral program and published my research and continued that research, and the story goes on and on. But I'll let somebody else tell their story.
Thanks, Roseanne. Fidel, would you like to answer those same questions, please?
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. How did I get started in writing? Well, I was a night shift nurse, and during the downtime, this is many years ago now, I started scribbling a reflection of what I was seeing at the time. And this is not scientific, it was not research. I wrote an essay during my break in my downtime, and I gave it to Nursing Spectrum. And at the
Wow.
time, Janice Spillane was the editor there, and she took it, and that sparked my interest. And I thought, yeah, maybe I can do this. So a small essay inspired me to do more of those eventually. But when Roseanne says, you submit something and it was not taken, I have that experience as well. So I was lucky. The very first one got taken. So if it was not, I would probably have been discouraged. But before that, what got me into writing is as a student at NYU. I was a master's student at NYU in the 90s, and there were a lot of writing assignments. Mind you, we're talking about before all of these word processing and whatnot, typewriter stuff things. I enjoyed it, and I thought, okay, this is probably something I can do, and I did. So the rest will come in later. So
Thank you. You just took me back down memory lane with Nursing Spectrum, the newspaper that we all used to receive, magazine/newspaper every week or two. So thank you for bringing back that memory. It makes me smile. Donna, would you like to answer the same question and tell
sure.
us?
Yes, thank you. So I actually got started in my master's program, and I submitted an abstract for a presentation I was full-time, so in my second year, just prior to graduation, and it was accepted for a podium presentation, which I was shocked because I thought it was getting a poster, maybe. And when I was presenting it, the editor-in-chief for the Journal of Pediatric Healthcare came up and said, "I'd love you to publish this." And I thought, I'm a student. Do you know that? I don't know that I could publish it. And, so that kind of got on the back burner a little bit. But when I went on for my PhD, of course, once you finish your doctoral program, whether it's PhD, DMP, you have a paper. It's big. Mine was like 259 pages, but it could be published in 15 pages, right? So one of your jobs my job was to get it down to these 15 pages and get it published. And I was so excited to see it in a very wonderful research journal. I was really happy about that. And then I got a little bit involved with the Journal of Pediatric Healthcare, and they asked me if I wanted to write annotated bibs, which is, I just summarized some work that was in the journal, and I did that for a couple of years. And I had met the editor-in-chief then at the national conferences, and I thought to myself, one day I might like to be editor-in-chief. And so then I presented again, and someone from Springer came up and said, "I think you could write a book." And I said, "No, I can't write a book." But lo and behold, a year later, with many nurse practitioners from around the country on behavioral health issues, and about 22 of my students or graduates, we all wrote chapters in the book. And we were so excited because the book received the American Journal of Nursing first place award for psych mental health and third place for pediatrics. So my graduates were excited, we were excited, and all of the authors. So my journey went on. From there, they asked me if I'd like to be a digital editor for Contemporary Pediatrics, which is a medical physician pediatrician journal. And I was like, I'm the first nurse they're asking. And so every month I write a commentary, which I take articles in that journal and I apply them to pediatric nurse practitioner or family nurse practitioner practice. And so then I continued on, and just recently she mentioned that I am currently the associate editor, and my dream is coming true. July 1, I become editor-in-chief of the Journal of Pediatric Healthcare. So I love to write. I love to help students learn to write and, perfect your writing. But you know what? You submit, you try, and you go forward. That's my
Thank
little
you, Donna,
story.
and congratulations on becoming the editor-in-chief. That's really very exciting. So, Roseanne, for our audience, how do you get started?
You have to write. I read a tweet by a different editor-in-chief once that said, "You want to know how you get started? stop not writing. So how do you get started writing? For me and for all the authors that I work with, a lot of times it's just landing on a topic, like what are you going to write about? And then from there, you have to decide like what journal is right for that topic. And that's an important decision. It increases your chances of acceptance if you're picking the right journal, if the audience of that journal matches your topic. And then you go into those author guidelines and you follow those guidelines. They're different for every journal. Donna, you mentioned a 15-page manuscript. My journal only takes 10-page manuscripts. Jono will only take 3,600 words, including references in the abstract. So, depending on the author, you have to tailor what you're writing. So picking your topic and having somebody help you with that. I do that all the time, helping people land on a topic. What do you love? What projects have you done? Even a quality project. Fidel, you mentioned a reflection. Sometimes that is what somebody is passionate about. And if it's a current topic, then that could work as well. All right, I'll give others a chance to throw some
No,
other
you
things.
did a great job. Donna, do you want to add anything to what Roseanne said?
So I agree with Roseanne said. I think one of the big things for me early on is I had mentors who would read what I wrote and make comments. And, then I would send it out and get more reviewer comments. Don't give up. I think when you send it out and you get those reviewer comments back, and you mentioned the American Journal of Nursing, one of the articles I first wrote was about infant apnea, and we sent it off to the American Journal of Nursing, and we got it back, and she said, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. And I thought, oh my goodness, okay, but at that time, I didn't have enough confidence to send it back in. But now, you do need to have that. And you take those reviewer comments, you address each one, and you send it back in. If they want it, they'll comment again, and you fix it until it becomes something really good. But I think having a mentor and a writing buddy, that's really important. If you connect with some people, I have certain people around the country that I love to write with. We have similar types of, what is it? Like, we're going to work on it for X amount of time each week, or every other week you set aside some time. So I think those things are very important.
Thank you. Very helpful. Continuing along the same vein, Roseanne, what has been your biggest obstacle to publishing? And how did you overcome it? Think back to the beginning. What was your biggest obstacle, and how did you get over that and achieve over 100 publications with over 400 citations?
Well, I think, Donna, you hit the nail on the head in terms of perseverance, because you do need a lot of that to keep going. And another obstacle is just confidence in yourself that you can do it. And Donna, you hit on that as well. And I laugh that I write so much now, because when I was a student, I hated writing. I would rather do a 250 multiple choice test than have to write an essay. It just was not my thing. And now I've been an editor-in-chief almost 10 years. I have all these publications, and it's ironic in a way. So I'm a case history for every person in the audience today, that just because you don't feel confident now doesn't mean that you can't do it. And you need friends. I think, Donna, I wanted to mention mentors earlier in what got me started. Mentors do get you started. And not every mentor is a good mentor for writing. We all have mentors for different parts of our professional lives. But picking up, seeking the help of somebody who could mentor you through the process, it really, really helps.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Fidel, What resources do you suggest for the novice writer?
Yeah, what resources can I suggest for the novice writer? So I would say, when if you ever thought about writing, the idea came across your mind, that probably is telling you something that you feel something about that activity. Just like if somebody thinks, okay, I think I'll start baking, or I'll start learning a new language. So if you ever thought that you wanted to write, that's already your cue. That's the number one resource, is your internal motivation that you want to do this. And then you look around you in terms of what can you write about? Because for me, the easiest for me to write was my own experience. That's why I got started in the reflection piece of it, because that's something I know well. So in other words, if you're looking for a resource, look at your closest environment, what's in there already that you might be able to write about. So a good example would be, suppose you are now a master's student or an undergrad student or a PhD student, where in the academic work you have that could be transformed into a paper. Okay. A lot of students are making PICO projects. Deb Chan, former executive vice dean, told me this: if you write a poster, think of the secondary thing that you can do about it. So you could write a paper about that. So in other words, the resources are around you. You identify them. So if you are a nurse in a unit, a med surg, and you're doing a quality improvement project, that's a resource to write about. So you do your literature search, and then you brainstorm. So another resource is human resources, the people around you, right? Donna mentioned mentorship. I got started into it, and I have to mention, and Sharon, you can relate, because we both have John Phillips as a teacher here at NYU. So John
Yep.
Phillips was sort of a pioneer here at NYU, Martha Rogers' buddy. And this is before the internet. And he recognized my writing, not in its perfection, but in its ability to propel a conversation. So he asked me to read my paper in front of the class. 3 of my papers I read in front of everybody.
Wow.
This is in master's program in 1992, before the internet. I mean, nowadays he could have sent it to everybody. And that inspired me. So inspiration is a resource, right? So those of you who are in that position to inspire others, that's a wonderful resource. I mean, a poor little nurse like me from the Philippines never would have imagined that I could be writing someday, but somebody trusted me, and that's John Phillips. So long answer to your question. And so I thank you for that.
Thank you. Very motivating. And again, thank you for taking me down memory lane for quite a happy memory. Donna, are there any resources that you can think of that you'd like to add for the novice writer?
Yes, so for the new writer, the journals. So if you look through a journal that you like or are interested in, so for me, anything pediatric, you can look at there and say, what are they writing about? And also, what do I have to do to get published in this journal? And you might find like a case study, and you would say, oh, I do case studies all the time. We do them in class as a master's student. We talk about them in grand rounds. Maybe I could take an interesting case study and create a paper on that. And those have less number total pages and less requirements. So that's like a way to get started. You might consider, oh, I've read something and I really liked it, but maybe I could apply it a little different to my practice. You could write a letter to the editor. It may not get published, but you might get a response back. So all of these things like help you. I think when you're new, I already mentioned mentorship, but getting started, like thinking about what are my hot topics? What do I really have a passion about? And what I'm passionate about, I need to develop an expertise. And once you begin to develop an expertise, now writing comes much easier for you because you know something really good that you want to convey to the audience. So those are some of the things for novice writers that could be very helpful.
Thank you, Donna. Fidel, I want to continue the conversation with you, and very much related to what you had just shared with us. What are some common mistakes that novice writers make?
Okay, common mistakes that novice writer. I'll speak for myself. Sometimes pride is a thing, right? So when I submit something and somebody gives a review and my feelings are hurt and I get discouraged. So I try to go past that now. So one of the challenges is, you will write something and it will be given for peer review. Expect that not everybody will like your paper, and so there will be criticism, there will be review, and you have to accept that and use that to improve your paper. So one of my papers went into 5. I submitted in the 5th journal. It went finally, but I did not give up. I was wanting it to go out there. But the mistake I had, I wasn't giving it to the right place. So until I realized that later, that it was not on the proper journal. So the barriers, right? You're talking about barriers or something?
We're talking about common mistakes.
Common mistakes. Not showing your work to others before you give it. Peer review. I'm lucky I have an in-house resource. So my husband is a good editor of my writing, because I'm still don't know how to use semicolons and those types of things. So show it to somebody who doesn't know anything about your topic.
Yes.
Okay. That's
Agreed.
Yeah. More of that later, but that's what I'm sure Roseanne or Donna has other advice in relation to that.
Roseanne, anything that you want to add related to this?
Yeah, in terms of common mistakes, I mentioned earlier following author guidelines, but I do see that over and over again. That is a very common mistake. And I think sometimes it's because you are doing, Fidel, exactly what you just said. You're going from journal to journal, possibly with a paper, and you're not adjusting it for what the author guidelines are. Or, as Donna mentioned, what do papers look like in that journal? Are they written in a scholarly style? Are they written in a conversational style? And then altering the manuscript to match the journal. So that's a very common mistake. And then basics, even like old references or using secondary references. So I'll see that in background lit review, and sometimes I'll be like, well, that doesn't sound right, that reference is the primary for that statement, and then I'm going into the reference and you find out it was a secondary reference. So those are common mistakes as well. I would urge people, in terms of topic and write journal, to write to the editor-in-chief. I don't mind getting those messages. Like, I just did a project on this, or I just did my doctoral project on that. And would your journal be, and with an abstract, would your journal be interested? And once the editor-in-chief says, yeah, I'm interested, just make sure you add implications. Like in my case, it would be implications for leaders, and that there's definitely take homes in there for a frontline manager. So I may add a little commentary to that. But once the editor-in-chief says, I want it, and you get it in your queue to review, you're not going to desk reject it right away, even if it's not what you want. You're going to go through the trouble of writing up suggestions, sending it back for a first revision before it even gets to peer review.
Thank you. Anything you would like to add that hasn't been discussed, Donna?
No, most everything has been discussed, I think, as far as common mistakes. I think not submitting it in the format that's requested. Like if you're supposed to do APA and it comes in AMA, it's going to get a desk reject, or not necessarily total rejection, but please fix it if you don't submit it with the if they want numbered lines, because that's much easier for a reviewer to look at line 32 on this page. This needs to be fixed. That's also might be a minor revision, but look first, so you're not like making your own obstacles. So I think that's one of the things that's kind of a common mistake, and not fitting the journal. I think Roseanne really talked to that. If you're sending in a manuscript that just really is so not for that particular journal, you're going to get an immediate desk reject. I think a lot of the publishers now do have connections with other journals, and you might even get one that says, well, maybe you should consider sending it to this journal, because that's more likely to be within their publication range. So that's it. And not making errors, like writing errors, punctuation errors. So that's why when Fidel said, take a look at, have somebody else read it, even if they don't have any idea about the topic, but it should make sense to them. When somebody else reads it, we get so embedded, it sounds perfect. But
Right.
when somebody else looks at it, it's like, well, not major, but things that just make it easier to get it going forward. So that's mostly what I think.
Roseanne?
Yeah, I just want to agree with that. I think flow is a common mistake, particularly if you're working with co-authors, and that, okay, you're going to do this section, you're doing that section, I'm doing that section, and you just put it together, but you don't really meld it together from a style perspective or a flow perspective. That's not uncommon and a problem. So that gets back to what you said, Donna. Have somebody else read it. It has nothing to do with it, because they can really be objective and even pick up typos you missed and things like that.
Thank you. And I think I'm smiling because that is the number one piece of advice I give to my doctoral students. You get so enmeshed in what you're doing, give your work to somebody who does not share that same passion and deep knowledge, and make sure that they can read it and basically understand what you're writing about. So I think that's a wonderful piece of advice. Donna, as an editor-in-chief, can you give us some insight into the editorial process?
Yeah, so soon to be editor-in-chief.
Okay, soon.
But so the editorial process begins with receiving the manuscript and then looking at it, saying, we do searches to make sure that it's original work. So that's done but an editor can look at that. And, it shouldn't be any more than 25% maybe, where there, it doesn't look at the bibliography or the references, but, the content. So when you're writing, be sure you're like synthesizing and using your words and not just picking up and taking. Because if it's like 60%, I've seen a few that are 89%, they're going to be rejected because it's already been published or taken. So sometimes people will cut and paste things in just to kind of for your references. It's so easy, but you have to synthesize that. So then, as you already mentioned, very important, we don't like any references more than 5 years old for clinical type of papers. That's, there should be something more updated. And also, does it fit the style of the journal? What, if it's a department that you're going for, does it fit that case study, those types of things? And then it should go out to, it usually will go out to reviewers, and reviewers will comment. We try to get reviewers back reviewer comments within 21 days. So know that it's going to be at least a month, depending upon your journal. You can kind of ask some people how long it might take. And then that'll come back to you with comments. It is nice to be polite, say, the reviewers have spent time, they're not paid. Reviewers are all volunteer, and you can volunteer to be a reviewer. That's another great way to learn. You might, say, well, I'm not going to review research articles right now, but there's department articles, there's case studies, there might be some policy. What are you good at? And so then you get to see what's being published and reviewing it and making thoughtful comments. So no one wants to hear anything negative. I cringe when I see someone who's written, well, this must be written by a student. Don't write that. That would never get sent out. So you're looking at the reviewer comments and you say, thank you for the comments. And you can just, when you're writing to send it back, you can say, I politely disagree with this statement and here's my rationale for it. But you just wouldn't write, I disagree, and leave it. You might say that to a professor, but not in the publication world. And you might also, you have to address each comment, and it's nice to make a table. And that's why, I'm looking at line 220, and this is what I've written before, but this is my new sentence for your comment. Thank you for that. So those are important things that people are looking for, and then send it back in a timely fashion. So you might be asked to send it back in 2 to 3 weeks or a month. Do that. But if, say, you're terribly busy and you say, oh, this month, I have graduation, I have to do this, I have to do that, then say, you know what, I can't do it within the 30 days. Would you accept 45 days? So, or maybe you're going on vacation, so you need that extra time. So I would do that as well. And then, again, it will go out to reviewers. That's usually a statement that will go back to reviewers for a second look. And then again, you might get more comments. So you continue this process until it gets to a point where it's ready to be sent off for more editing. We usually have other editors who fix it more in the style of the journal as well. So that's kind of the process that you're going through. Be patient. If you don't hear back for some reason within a reasonable amount of time, like within a month, you might then query the editor. I submitted this paper a month ago. Do you have any information for me? Because you do want to get it published. So, if they're going to totally reject it, maybe you do need to look for another journal. But you do have to remember you can only submit to one journal at a time. And you do have to verify that. And you also have to verify that ethically you have, written this paper and you follow up. Well, you follow the APA format where you and anybody who's written as an author has to have contributed to the writing. So it's just not, you come, well, I'll put you on. That's not it. It has to be someone who's made a substantive contribution to the writing.
Thank you. That last point is something I think sometimes people are not aware of. Roseanne, as another chief editor, we're blessed to have 2 tonight, or one soon to be and one already. What else if anything, would you like to add to that very thorough discussion that Donna provided?
It was very, very
Wasn't it?
thorough. I can't think of a thing you missed in going through the process from beginning to end. And it is iterative. It's probably the worst. I shouldn't say worst. That's not a good descriptor, but I think going back 3 times is probably like the max I've seen. And even that final editing process can sometimes feel a little painful because then it's in final, it's accepted, like you've done all the revisions you need to do. And then it goes into final editing, and then you're going to get it back with bubbles on what about this, what about that, what about this. So it's not over until it's over. But once you get to that point, it's accepted, and you just have to finish that last piece. So I totally agree with everything you said, Donna, in terms of peer review. And every manuscript has at least 2 peer reviewers. And sometimes, at least with my journal, Donna, I don't know about yours, if one peer review, let's say I review everything first. So let's say I say rework after peer review, like it's in good enough shape to get to peer review to start. but I have a list of, things. Then it goes to peer review, and one says accept and another says reject, like they're totally opposite each other. So then it goes to a third, and then we kind of put it together and decide where we're going with it. So that could happen, which would delay the process a bit.
Okay.
But I also agree with what you said, and I think Fidel, you mentioned this as well too. When you get those suggestions back and it looks scary, just put it in a table, put every suggestion in its own row and address it. Just go through, address everyone. And if you disagree professionally. I mean, I've gotten comments back from authors that were nasty about suggestions for rework, and then I tell the publisher, all right, forget it, we're done with this one. So like, just be professional about it. And I've disagreed with peer review comments that I've gotten on papers, but you just say why, and that I would say flies like most of the time.
Okay, thank you. Roseanne, what advice would you give to someone that has submitted a manuscript and has been rejected? What next?
I would tell them to do exactly what Fidel said he did with one of his papers, which is send it to the next, take the comments, whatever comments you get, incorporate them and send it, like really pay some attention to what's the right journal for that paper, and then send it somewhere else. And I think, Fidel, you said it was the 5th journal that finally published a paper of yours. So see, perseverance, it works.
I think we've heard perseverance, patience, politeness, lots of P's tonight in the publishing process. Donna, anything that or Fidel, actually, anything that you'd like to add to having experienced rejection of your manuscript? Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, in general, peer reviewers are thoughtful. They give you good comments, and I learned a lot from that, both as a recipient of a review and as a reviewer. I review for about 13 journals.
Oh,
So I'm very busy.
sure are.
And so what I suggest, if you have the opportunity, if you're a PhD student now or anywhere in your career, volunteer as a reviewer. If you want to get an idea of what's the process like, what's being written out there, because you do learn a lot from reviewers. And some really good reviewers, they even direct you to specific sources, and I tend to do that if I'm reading something, because you don't have the time in the world to read everything that's the latest and the greatest. So a paper that's written, and I know of a paper that should be in there, but it's not in there, so I would put that in the review. And so when my paper is rejected, I would look and say, okay, is there anything in here that I should be putting in here? And so that becomes an inspiration for me to read more or to learn more. I give an example. So right now, I wrote an essay about a chat GPT, and I wanted to write it as a blog. Okay, but before I gave it to the blog at ANA, I sent it to an editor who I know. I said, "Okay, take a look at this, and you think there is some future in this in your journal?" I said, "Yes, we'll take it right now. It's the hottest topic." By the time it got accepted, new information had come in, and I had to revise the paper like 3 more times. And this is a short piece. This is not a thesis, right? This is 1,000 words. So with that, it's very important to, when your paper is rejected, take a deep breath, look and say, okay, is there anything that I should be putting in here that may move this, in the right direction? Sometimes I also pay attention to who are the editorial boards of the paper. So if I'm submitting to Rosan's paper, I think I'm on a cite Rosan's paper. If I'm submitting to Donna's papers, I'll probably, funny enough, Donna, I wrote a Pete's paper. I'm not the primary author, but I felt a little bit imposter syndrome. But I mentored someone for a writing, and it's a Pete's paper. I know nothing about Pete's, absolutely nothing, but I know about writing. So I mentored this person, and it got accepted in Carl's journal. So that's one way to sort of, see what's out there. You want the people around who is going to read this paper feel good about it. Okay.
So actually,
Thank you.
Fidel, you're only doing 13, so now you can review for mine, be 14. And now that I know your Pete's experience, all the better.
Fidel, you might have just gotten a new job. Thank you all. Just a couple more questions. Roseanne, can you explain what an impact factor is?
All right, true confessions, nursing management does not have an impact factor. There is a whole process that we've applied for it for years. It's a whole process. And I'm going to probably turn this over to Donna, but the bottom line on impact factor is that you have a higher impact factor if the papers in your journal are cited, like cited over and over again. So the more so editors are looking for papers that they know will be hot topics, Fidel, to use your word, and will be cited, because that improves the impact factor of a journal. Now, some people, when you're picking a journal, if that's important to you, you might want to pick a journal. If you're picking between 2 or 3 journals, you're going to pick the one with the higher impact factor, because you have theoretically a higher chance of your paper getting cited. So I'm sure there's more to this. I can tell you a funny anecdote. I published in Jonah an intent to leave study, which was a subset of data from a big study I had done. And it was right in the first year of the pandemic. It was published like early in the second year. I don't remember exactly the time sequence now. That paper gets published over and over again. It's one of the first ones that was out there. And I saw Karen Hill at a meeting, and she said to me, "Thank you, Roseanne. You increased my impact factor. I'm so glad I accepted that paper." So Donna, you could probably take this a little further than I can.
Yeah, so you're exactly right, though. The impact factor is based on many things, but one of the big things is how often is it cited by others. And like, I was very excited. I was at the meeting to over spring break, and an article I wrote before becoming associate editor on methodologies with a colleague. It was on methodologies examining the COVID vaccine that was actually out by the FDA, published there, all the data, and we examined it, and it's been cited numerous times. And normally this methodology section was not cited much at all. So again, it was a hot topic, and we had talked through, we should do this. And so it does. The more it's cited, the better the impact factor can come. Also, looking at like what the particular journal, like if it's a research oriented journal, what are these research articles that are being published? So a lot of times now people are doing a lot of integrated reviews, especially because like a lot of PhD programs have gone to, rather than having you do your dissertation as one big paper, they're going to 3 different articles. So one is it's usually some type of an integrative review. The second portion might be the methodology in another chapter, and then the third is your results. So a lot of people are submitting the integrative reviews almost overwhelmingly, but it's actually the research papers that actually will help improve the impact factor as well. And so those are downloads. That's part of the impact factor, how many people are actually downloading it as well. So, you can, see, you can look at all this data, or they actually look at the data, and editors follow the impact factor, and hopefully it continues to rise. And the higher the impact factor, it might be more difficult to get published in that particular journal, because like the AGN has a very high impact factor. So how many are actually published and how many don't get to publication? I think I was going to mention this, because this I found out this a few years back, way before I became the associate editor. But some people submitted to high impact journals just to get the feedback with no intention of following the recommendations and resubmitting. I was like, well, that's not right, because then
Wow.
they could take those reviews, which were very substantive, and then, get it published in a different journal. And I said, that's really not fair to those reviewers, because you're thinking they want to be published in your particular journal. So the other thing is how impact affects the impact factors, how many people are submitting papers to your journal. So there's a lot of things that go in the impact factor. There's probably like at least 20 things that the heads of the publishers look at. And then they have discussions with you. And also, how quickly is the turnaround? That's one of the big things. That's why when somebody gets it back and we ask for 30 days, and it's 60 days, or one I found was like a year, I was like, we have to get this one off the books. And what was happening for quite a while, professors, not at NYU, but professors were saying in their syllabi, in the doctoral programs and some of the master's programs, you have to submit your final paper to a journal and get a letter back saying that you submitted it. So I was at a major meeting, the National Organization of Nurse Practitioner Faculties, when this was discussion, because the journal editors that were there were being bombarded with tons and tons, and you have to now get this off your desk, either out or reject something, because that also affects your impact factor if you're just having a bunch of articles sit there. So a lot of the faculty said, oh, we'll take this off of our syllabi. Although I think some people still do just send it out to get their letter saying, yes, thank you for submitting, or an email now, thank you for submitting your article. We're sorry we can't accept it, but they got the paper to show that they submitted it. So it's not something good to do. And I hope any faculty are no longer doing that. But there's so many things that go in this impact factor. And I know another journal editor that just recently said her journal was going to finally have an impact factor. So she was anxious to see what that is. And of course, me going July 1, I'm anxious. I want it to continue to go up as best as possible. So
Thank you, Donna. So now we're going to open it up to questions and answers. Please type your questions into the chat and we'll get to as many of them as possible. Okay, the first question in the chat, and any one of our panelists can answer it. Can you explain what an open access journal is?
All right, I'll go first, Donna, since you just talked, but you can add to it as well. Most journals offer the option of open access. And what that means is you own the paper. You have to pay for it. It's a cost. And you own the paper. You can send it to whoever you want. You can put it on ResearchGate and distribute it to anybody who asks for a full text copy. It's your paper to do what you want with. There's no restrictions on it. Now, if any of you are lucky enough to work for an organization where they want you to publish your, research paper and they'll pay for it, There certainly is many organizations that would do that, but it's not necessary at all to be published to pay for open access. Now, there are journals that are only open access. So, for example, the Journal of Nursing Management, which always gets confused with my journal, just went only open access. So you have to pay to play to be published in that journal. Donna, what can you add to that?
So what I can add to it, so you're absolutely right. Some journals have both open access and not, and you get to choose which one. And so sometimes when you're, doing research, you can put that in the cost. It's like $800. You have to look, but you can put the cost in to have it as open access, because you can then distribute, as you said, easily out widely. Some of the journals will allow you like 50 or 60 days to distribute the link to anyone that you want. So that also is important. But I think one of the big things you have to think about is predatory journals. Some of the open access international journals are really not they're not really publishing per se, they're predatory. And you can look up the names of, you can type in predatory journals and look up the names. Don't submit to them. They're open access. They'll take your paper. It'll look like it's published, but it won't go to it won't go to ORCID. So if you have an ORCID account, you can look up your publications, but on a predatory journal, it's not going to be there. So you're paying $800 or $1,000, but don't do it. And sometimes you'll get, we would like you to submit your article within the next 3 days, right? Or
Yeah.
within the next few days, submit your article on such and such, and we're an open access journal. I just delete those, because they're not, often if you notice they're not really written well in English, that it's not going out. So that's a good type of thing to look at as far as predatory journals, but not all open access by any means are. It's how you can want to distribute your writings, because you're not allowed, once you sign over, it becomes in a regular journal that you chose not to do open access. It's really their property. And if you can get it, you can download it from the website and stuff, especially if you have, you're a member of that journal, you've paid for it, or you get access to it, but you can't really put it on like ResearchGate. You can't put it there. Those types of things are not allowed. So you do need to know what you can and can't do once you sign over your work to someone else, to a journal.
Thank you for addressing predatory journals, because that actually was another question that came in. Okay, so that was really important. There is another question. In general, what topics are journals looking for? Fidel, you talked about hot topics. Can you give us an example of what some of those hot topics are? And then we'll ask Roseanne and Donna as well.
Yeah, the ones that I write for or have written for, I asked Carl for the AJN for a wish list. What is the journal's wish list? So pharmacology, new medication, anticoagulants, everybody is an anticoagulant these days after COVID. So that's very popular. You think we know everything and anything about heparin, but then COVID came, and now we have to relearn heparin. So that's sort of a wish list. Opioids, those types of things. I was asked to write a paper on thyroid tumors. Apparently it's increasing in cases. I didn't write it. I don't know so much about it. And in education journals right now, so GPT, chat AI is very hot. And I actually would like to ask Roseanne or Donna what their journals are talking about, or what's the plan on dealing with chat GPT right now. In terms of the publishing industry, because the JAMA has already written a policy on it. So what's hot in the nursing publication world more or less reflects the current healthcare environment. So if you look at the top 10 diseases, is cardiac and diabetes. So those are things. DEI topics are hot, right? Diversity, inclusivity. So you could spin your topic on. So for example, I had just written an article on diabetes, but this time the focus was Asian Americans. So we know a lot about diabetes, but this time I put the science on why, the Asian Americans have a different patterns in presentation. So you can look at the headlines of the New York Times. They usually gives you idea what's hot and what's not out there. But if you have contact with the editors, you can ask them.
Okay, Roseanne, any hot topics that you'd like to add, please?
So for my journal, the focus is on leadership. And so the hot topics are not clinical topics like AJN is looking for. It's more leadership related. DEI and belonging fits into that for sure. In anything related to innovation, innovative care models, technological improvements in workflow for nurses, anything related to, honestly, the workforce was so disrupted. Anything related to stabilizing the workforce or improving workflow or work environment are all hot topics. Workplace violence is a hot topic. What else? Actually, lots of QI well-being is a hot topic as well.
Okay, thank you. Next question from the chat. What is the process, or how do you make your dissertation a manuscript? Donna, would you like to take that one, please?
Sure. I just wanted to add something to
I'm
hot
sorry.
topics.
Go ahead.
A lot of journals do special issues, and actually you have a couple of months to write the article or get your research to where you would want it to be. An example is the journal I'm with. In March of next year, the special issue is on diversity, inclusion, belonging, and equity. So anyone who's interested in writing an article for that, it's not due till September 1. So you have a lot of time to write something. So you could look at the journal, it could be a case study, it could be a lot of things. For me, other hot topics are behavioral health in pediatrics. That's like a big hot topic right now. And, it bubbled up in COVID, and it's still very, very prevalent. So those are some of the things. And your question was,
how do you make your dissertation a manuscript?
So one of the things I feel when I'm working with students, I say, you've done this big, ginormous literature review. Now condense it down to 3 pages, because that's going to be step 1 of your research, of your article for a manuscript for publication. So you look at, what you're doing. If you haven't done it and you have a big dissertation, you just look at it and say, let me summarize my dissertation. So, what did I do? How did I come up with the problem? How did I write the literature review? What's really important? Just a few pages of it. What's the methods? What's the results? What is the implications for practice? And so you just say, you know what? You've written it. It's your work. You can cut and paste it into your manuscript for submission. And that's the easiest way. I remember when I finished my dissertation, I actually stepped back for 6 months. By the time you've written that, you have to step back and say, I got the degree in my hand. And then I had an interview for a position. And the very first thing the dean said to me, have you published your dissertation? I was like, well, yeah, I have the dissertation book. She said, no, the manuscript from your dissertation. So that's the first thing you're going to publish. So I was like, okay. And you know what? It got accepted without revisions, because all the faculty fed into it, the reviewers fed into it. So it was ready to go. So you are ready to go at that. and just do little pieces as you go along. Take, what I just said, the different slices. If you're doing a quality improvement project, same thing. You get the work done as you're going along, because those two are very big, 100 or more pages with all the different tables and drawings. And so what is the most important thing that you want to convey to that audience is what you do for that.
Thank you. I'm smiling because for my first faculty position, my dean asked me exactly the same question. So it's important. Next question, and this one, Roseanne, I'm going to give to you. Any suggestions or tips in regards to editing down a long paper where you feel all of the information you've written is good and vital information?
Well, that's pretty typical. Any tips? You might have to get some help. Like you might need an objective person to look at the paper and see where there's either kind of duplication of points, or if you have a lit review that's a mile long, you could synthesize that down. Like that's probably the first place I would go, was to the background and lit review section to skinny that down.
Okay. Donna, anything you would like to add to that?
So yeah, when you've written it all, it's like you own this baby and you want to get it all published. But it is important, and as Roseanne said in the beginning, there's specific word limits and character limits. You look that up. And if you try to stick something in that's bigger, I remember thinking my abstract is wonderful. And it was supposed to be 150 words and it was 210 and it rejected it right away. I couldn't even get it in. So, I had many times I tried. So I said, well, how am I going to lose almost 100 more words? And so, one thing I did, I took out all the thes and I thought, well, that doesn't sound any good now. So I put some back in and then removed some of the other things that I felt, well, I could get rid of that. So that's how you have to do it. And if it says they only want 1,200 or 3,600 words, you have to do that. And because some of them will say, put how many words, document word count, document words plus characters. So you have to kind of give up those things that aren't the most important to you. And, I think we've all said, let somebody else read it and they're not married to it. So they could say, oh yeah, get rid of this, take those 3 paragraphs away. It's not really adding anything to it. So those are some of the
Thank you. Our next question is not a question, but more of a comment. Not a question, but just want to say how inspiring this is. As an almost master, I'm excited to do more writing. You gave some great first steps. Is there a forum for new nurse authors?
I can't think of any.
Fidel?
I cannot think of any forum for nurse authors, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And that gives you an idea to start one, right?
That's what I was just thinking. I think we need to start one.
Some organizations, so example, the American Association of Nurse Practitioners, the fellows there will help. That you could actually, so if you're a nurse practitioner in any specialty, you can join the organization and then you can be mentored by one of the fellows on actually, working on writing. So they do have that. The National Association of Pediatric Nurse Practitioners also has fellows that could help with writing as well. So that's one of the ones that I do know of.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. So
something.
Sorry,
Sharon.
go ahead, please,
Yeah,
Fidel.
I'd like to add. Donna is probably familiar with this, and so is Roseanne. At NYU, I am part of something called Writing Accountability Group. So what it is we have a group, we gather 1 hour a week, and the point of the gathering via Zoom is to write. Okay.
Yes.
So this is one way to focus your efforts. So if you're a staff nurse, if you're a master's student right now, a PhD student, organize yourselves. create a schedule every, I don't know, Wednesday at 2, you log on. The point is you sort of dedicate a time where you actually write something, whether it's you read an article to be written or to be part of your references, or you formatted something, or you brainstorm a topic, or you write headings, but just to get you going, because I find one of the hardest things for me sometimes is to get just started with that first word. And I advise, I type my name because that I know. Okay. Type title, and then I get going, because you have
Thank you.
partners. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. That was great. So as we start to wrap up, okay, a last quick comment is Fidel is somebody stating that the writing accountability group sounds great. Okay, so I agree. So as we wrap up, before I turn it back to Mary, I'm going to go around and in a few words or one sentence, I'm going to ask each of my panelists to give one final thought. Roseanne, you're on. One final thought.
Start writing.
Perfect. Donna, your final thought.
Yeah, be confident in yourself. Reach your goals, set a goal and get it.
Thank you. Fidel, your final thought, please.
Well, if I can do it, you can do it.
Thank you. And Mary, I am turning this back over to you.
Thank you, Sharon, and thank you, Dr. Hallis, Dr. Lynn, and Dr. Rosso for sharing your inspiring insights on your journeys for writing and editing. One of the things I learned, actually totally new knowledge, I did not know the impact factor of a journal. I did not know that. And I've gotten those emails asking for manuscripts. Never, well, I thought they might be suspicious, but never heard them really labeled credit to Army journals. And then consistently through the talks tonight, go for it, right? Write, internal motivation, have the confidence. And early on, it was summed up, submit, try, and go forward. Keep going. So very grateful that you all joined us as guests this evening and hope you enjoyed this forum. You will be receiving a survey later on this evening. I encourage you all to fill it out so we have feedback of other programs we can design. And our next program is in person at the end of the month, April 26th. And we are hosting a wine tasting actually at NYU Myers, located on First Avenue and 26th Street. So looking forward to seeing anybody local or those who want to learn more about wine joining us on April 26th. Have a wonderful rest of the evening and thank you all so much.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.